All right. Hi, everybody. This is going to be just a short video to cover the last part of the money chapter. Last time we talked about what makes people happy in terms of financial issues. And we did say, and we discovered that happier people do make more money. And we went over several reasons for why that is the case. But the question here currently is, why doesn't money actually matter more? And remember, we've been talking about that baseline set of happiness that we always seem to return to. This baseline, this genetic baseline basically determines our personality, how hopeful, how optimistic we are. And so, a little bit more money may not add any more to our happiness because we are going to consistently return back to that baseline that we have. Or if we lose money, we're going to also, suffer for a little bit, maybe in terms of our well being, but then we would go back up to our baseline. Also, money may not be good at buying us relationships. And we know relationships, that's one of the big importance. It's part of that self-determination theory, right? Autonomy, competence, and relatedness. And so money may not be able to do that. And then also we have the sensory adaptation that we engage in to help us adapt to bad and to good things in our life. And that hedonic treadmill, meaning that no matter how much we get, we always want more. And so, in terms of explaining why money doesn't have more effect, we can use these things to explain. In addition to sensory adaptation, we can also use this notion of contrast. So, contrast is where some major life event makes other events seem less impactful. So, a major positive event, for example, may make a more mundane, everyday positive thing pale in comparison. So, if you win $100 million, it's really difficult to imagine being any happier than that. And so every little tiny little positive thing in your life after that, it just pales into comparison. The same thing would happen, except for example, if you, for you know uh, God forbid, you were involved in a terrible accident and end up in a wheelchair. Now nothing else that's bad that happens to you could compare to that one big bad event. And so when someone tells you, oh, they're complaining about this, or they've had a bad day, you're in that wheelchair, you're like, really? Why are you complaining about that? So there's that contrast there that also plays a part in helping people who are chronically ill or in a wheelchair, for example, an accident victim, to be able to say, well, the terrible things in my life that happen after that, they really don't bring me down, because I mean, how could anything compare to this really bad thing that happened to me? And habituation, again, that can explain how, you get that nice new home, it's great for a while, and then after a while, you just get used to it. And the same thing could happen with when you're in the wheelchair, right? That you are really heartbroken by it at first, but then after a while, your life just adjusts. You just adapt to the situation that you're in, and it doesn't bring you down as much as it did before. So both contrast and habituation theory can explain why accident victims aren't, any worse off in terms of their well-being after a little while after the accident, and why lottery winners sometimes aren't any better over the long term than they were before in terms of their well-being. Additionally, we have that hedonic treadmill, right? Where you get more and you want more. The more you have, the more you want. And in fact, and I have a little note here, more money can actually lead to more stress. So for example, you win the lottery, you buy that new house in the suburbs. Well, now you've got the stress of commuting to the city or to your job, and that creates more and more stress on you. So there's always a drawback, right? You win the lottery, all of a sudden, all these relatives and friends come out wanting a handout, and then you've got to find a way to, how are you going to manage that? How are you going to deal with that? And so these issues, right, complicate this relationship that we have between well-being and financial kinds of issues. Another thing too to keep in mind is that lottery winners do get a boost, okay, in happiness. But it turns out, and if you read the journal articles that are within Module 6, you'll see that lottery winners, the only way to receive a long-term benefit from winning the lottery is if you maintain purpose and meaning in your life. So lottery winners who, for example, keep their jobs, if those jobs gave them meaning and value in life, they tend to be happier. So we don't just like to sit around. We don't just like to engage in leisure activities all the time. We have to have that challenge. We have to have that meaning and purpose. And so for people who continue to work in a meaningful job, or maybe they leave a job and they get a job that's more meaningful to them, that brings their life purpose, they tend to be happier than people who just engage in leisure activities all the time. All right. Now, what's the good news for us is that, despite our financial status, if you will, we tend to have a positive rather than a neutral level of happiness. So our happiness levels tend to be set pretty high. People return to different baselines depending on their personality. And the good news is that we can actually change our baseline. Our level of happiness influences the likelihood of experiencing positive and negative events. The truth is, studies have shown time and time again, if our happiness levels are set higher, we tend to experience more positive things. And when our happiness baselines are set lower, we tend to experience more negative things. And that's because of our perspective. Now, I will say that adaptation, is a good thing in the sense if you're experiencing bad things in your life, but people don't always adapt. So if it's a chronic illness, if you lose someone like a child or a spouse, someone really close to you, if you care for someone long-term who has a chronic illness, caregiving is very, very difficult. And also those with progressive diseases. So if you have Parkinson's disease, your disease is going to get worse and worse and worse. And yeah, it's very difficult to adapt to that. Now, you had an engaged learning on this. What material possessions are on your list? Ask you, just write down what are the things that are on your list right now. And what studies have shown is that we have on average about 6 things on our wish list at any time. And this contributes to what we call the tyranny of the unnecessary. That is, we have so much stuff. You can see in this picture here. Think about this. We have an average of 3 television sets per home. Think of all the clothes and the school supplies and, just the various things that you have, the amount of money that we spend on storage, it's booming. We said that the square footage of homes has actually tripled over the last generation. So 84% of us believe that a good life includes a vacation home. Again, if any of you own a vacation home or your family owns a vacation, it's not all butterflies and rainbows. There's a lot of extra responsibility that comes with having a home. Our aspirations have actually doubled recently in terms of what kind of income we need to do those things. Another thing that happens with materialism, in addition to this tyranny of the unnecessary, is we have so much stuff that it's actually a burden to us, is this notion of social comparison or keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with our neighbors. In this particular study, they had students make diary entries for 2 weeks, and they made comparisons. How did they compare to others with regard to grades and social skills and physical attractiveness, personality, opinions, money and possessions? And what they found was that their feelings about themselves, right, where they had negative or positive feelings, really depend on if they were comparing up or if they were comparing down. So if they were comparing to people they thought were better than them, that resulted in negative feelings. If they were comparing people who were a little bit below them or not performing as well on those things, that gave them positive feelings, making them feel better. Now, it's important to note that there's positive and negative consequences to social comparison. So the positive effect of upward comparison is that, okay, you might have dissatisfaction and envy, right, about where you are, and you're envious of that person, but it also may give you something to aspire to, like give you hope. Hey, oh, I would love to have a boat like that one day or a camper like that one day. If you're making a downward comparison, of course, that induces a positive feeling of gratitude. I'm happy that I have what I have, but can also be scornful. Like, oh, look at them. Look at how low life they are. Okay. So we got to be careful about, making downward and upward comparisons. There's positive and negatives to both. But what you want to do is, you want to use the right kind of comparison in the correct situation. So there's something called relative deprivation, where we basically compare ourselves to others who are like us, to similar others. Okay. You've got to make that comparison. What you want to do is say something like, well, I could have been that person and I can aspire to be like them. I have the capability to do that now. Your happiness really depends on the others that you're comparing yourself to. So your happiness depends a great deal on your neighbor's paycheck. If you're surrounded by richer people in your neighborhood, you tend to be less happy. And they always say, well, buy the least expensive house in the neighborhood. Well, according to this research, maybe not. Okay. Maybe you should buy like the house that's sort of in the middle, because then you have people who can give you hope and aspiration, the richer people in the neighborhood. And then you can also make a downward comparison to the people that are not doing so good and make yourself feel better about yourself. We usually make comparisons to coworkers who are in similar positions. That makes sense, right? Um, Self-relevance. This is also another important thing. We don't make comparisons with people who have talents or skills or possessions that we don't really value. So if you're not a music person, you don't have any musical talents, why compare yourself to another student who has a musical talent? No, you're going to compare yourself to someone else who has some sort of value or has some sort of talent that you really want or desire or need. So this isn't really bad at all, this relative deprivation that we kind of experience. Our ability or our inability, excuse me, to remain kind of dissatisfied with our current situation is the reason we try to do better and better, right? We see something, we want it, we aspire to it. So it does kind of serve a motivational factor in us. But the problem is when we do it too much. And also when we compare ourselves to people that will never be like, or when we compare yourself to someone who is doing something or involved in something or has some trait or talent that you really shouldn't value. In terms of excessive materialism, we see that people who place a very high value on material wealth and possessions actually report lower levels of well-being. And so some people say, well, what's going on here? Is it chicken the egg? Is it you're already materialistic and that's how you end up with lower levels of well-being, or you already have lower levels of well-being and so you use materialism to kind of boost your well-being, like you try to buy things to try to supplement the emptiness that you feel inside. And it turns out it may be both. So excessive materialism seems to interfere with psychological and social needs. So you may put your material wants over your relationships with other people. And so you may have lower quality relationships, but we also do know that insecure and unhappy people who already have lower levels of well-being may also be attracted to materialism to compensate for their unmet needs. All right, so here are some ways to spend your money that are going to help increase your happiness, right? So we can't get away from the financial aspect, but how can we use it? So one thing they say is buy an experience over buying something material. When you buy an experience, you have the looking forward to the experience, you've got the experience itself, and then you have your memories of the experience. You're not as likely to adapt to that experience as much as you would to a material possession. Use your money to benefit someone else other than yourself. They say if you're going to spend your money, spend it on others. Buy small pleasures rather than some fewer ones, right? Remember, you're going to buy that big thing and then you're going to adapt to it. So if you buy a little thing, then you get a little boost, right? And then another little boost, and then another little boost, right? And so you get more frequent little boosts instead of one big boost that's going to fade after a while. Buy less insurance. Why? Well, because you're going to want the upgrade soon anyway. You're going to want the bigger and better thing soon anyway. So why buy the insurance if when it breaks, you'll probably just be happier if you just replaced it. Buy now and consume later. This is great. This is what we do to avoid the pain of paying effect. The pain of paying effect is when you feel a little bit of negativity as a result of dishing out some money. So what I suggest is, like, if you're going to buy something on Amazon, delay the shipping for a little bit. If you don't need it right away, when you get it, guess what? It feels like it's free when it arrives. Think about what you're not thinking about. Sometimes, like when we spend money, we we think about how this is going to improve our happiness if I only have this right now. But sometimes you've got to think about, well, what is what is this going to matter in terms of 6 months from now or 7 months from now? Right. So think about what you're not thinking about. Also, beware of comparison shopping. So, comparison shopping, right, is going to set up that paradox of choice in you. It's just going to provide more choices, which is just going to overwhelm you. And then you're going to be full of regret, right? And then also pay close attention to the happiness of others, right? Think about things in terms of your relationships. Instead of buying, mom for Mother's Day, instead of buying her, a piece of jewelry, ask her really, Mom, what would make you happy for Mother's Day? What do you want to do? Okay. All right. Another thing to think about this is that, people with more relationships, with better quality relationships, it just outweighs the effect of throwing money at it. So, for example, people with 5 or more friends are 50% more likely to describe themselves as very happy. So instead of, spending your money on material things, maybe throw a party, spend your money on that, or set up a regular lunch date with that person, spend that money on them. Okay. I love this one. 2-year-olds were happier when they gave goldfish to others from their own goldfish pile rather than from another person's pile, just highlighting this notion of making other people happy. Here's some additional rules. Shopping isn't the best approach, right? So remember that shopping for something you do not need only brings short-term gains. So try to put the blinders on when you're walking through Walmart and you see all those sales, and they're gonna like just uh they're gonna encourage you to spend money that you didn't plan on spending. Being frugal can be joyful. Many people have discovered during tough times that they're actually happier by not spending. If you guys ever use an app called Every Dollar, where you track all your spending, it's kind of cool to see, oh, wow, look what I'm actually saving. And then also think about this too. It kind of frees you up from having to keep up with the Joneses, right? You're like, this is one of my goals, is to be frugal and to save money. You don't have to worry about keeping up appearances and buying things just to make yourself look like you are, somehow keeping up with the Joneses or keeping up with your neighbors. More isn't always better. Remember that the richest countries aren't always the happiest. If you think about Costa Rica and Vietnam, they score low in terms of income levels, but they outscore Japan, which is a richer country than them. Denmark and Norway are usually beating out Germany and the US, even though Germany and the US tend to be higher in terms of the gross national product. And just remember that your salary can't save you. Yeah, you'll get a boost in happiness short term, but it's not the goal, right? The goal is to have work and have a fulfilling life, having meaning and purpose. And so don't worry about it if you don't get that raise. When you get into your career, it'll happen. It might happen a little slowly, but it will happen. But that's not what's going to bring you the happiness. What's going to bring you happiness is having that meaning and value in your life. All right. That's it. I've got several assignments for you posted on Canvas. I also extended some due dates so you can check out Canvas for that. And then I'll also post a little short video on culture. All right. Talk to you guys later. Bye.